Hi, everyone, and thank you very much, Paul, for the nice introduction. I tried to make this full screen mode, and now we should be ready to go. So welcome, everybody, and today is going to be about strategic design. And strategic design is something that is just emerging in business. I think many businesses are starting to use design thinking as a method to come up with new ideas for value creation. The point is that we need to understand when we need to use the conventional strategic thinking tools that imply to use the rationality as a way to think, and when we need to use design thinking, or human-centered design as a way to come up with new possibility for value creation. Now, let me get started by introducing myself very briefly. As Paul said, I have a connection with Darnley Business School, and I was mentoring for the online courses that was facilitated by Professor Jean Litka. And the point was try to create a conversation about the topic of, in that case, was design thinking. And what we have learned out of teaching design thinking online that only works if we get engaged in the conversation. It's not one-way conversation. Design requires participation, and most of all requires people, like today, in a webinar, to ask lots of questions. Because most of the time, we, as trainers or facilitator of knowledge, will learn by answering questions. It's not a perfect subject. When we talk about design thinking, strategic design, it's not like math or physics that there is the right question. I think my role today is going to be more a facilitator of knowledge and try to understand who is on the line, on the other side of the webinar. And if you have any question, or maybe you want to apply design thinking to a specific project that you are facing, just please let us know in the chat, and I try to share my experience if I ever work in a topic that is similar to the one that you have. Now, what we are going to see today? Well, today I divided this webinar in 4 parts. The first part is going to be about identifying which type of problem we face as business people in our companies. And I divided the problem in 2 different types. We have a type of problem that can be, we can use the analogy of a puzzle. Another type of problem in which they are kind of more mysteries, and we are going to see the fundamental difference between these 2 types of problems. Why we need to do that? Because that is the starting point. We need to understand that there is a substantial difference between 2 different challenges that we face in our business. And then when we clarify the basic difference between the 2, we start to understand that we can think in business in 2 different ways. There are 2 different modes of thinking in business. There is rational thinking, that I suppose is something that we have been using for, at this stage, probably 70 years, and refers to strategy or business strategy. But then on the other side, we are also creative creatures. And if you really look at the companies that are able to innovate time and after time, are those that are not only rational. They don't do only strategic thinking, but they actually are able to spur the creativity on their employees. And after that, I want to put this new way of thinking about business in kind of in a chronological perspective. And in there, we will see that a business strategy actually came first. And I want to dig deeper just for a few seconds on the why, business strategy emerged in business. But later on, we are also going to see when did design, human-centered design, and design thinking really enter the conversation, the business conversation. Because design up to maybe 10 years ago was only used by design companies. And it's only recently that businesses are start using design to complement their strategic thinking effort. But later on, I want to close this webinar giving you a real example or now I'm using strategic design, or how I try to facilitate a strategic design agenda within my clients. Okay, so let's get started understanding which type of problem we are trying to solve in our companies. And let me ask you a question. Now, if you want, just type in the chat, is there a particular problem that you want to solve? And if you want to just type in how you believe that strategic design or design thinking can help you, if you want to share that with us, we will try to find an understanding, or I try to see if I ever occur in a similar problem and try to share my knowledge about it. But basically, when we as business people, we face two kinds of problems, and we need to clarify which type of problem we face. Let me say that 99% as business people, we face problems that we can define using the analogy of the puzzle. And I want you to close your eyes for a second and thinking to try to work on a puzzle and reach the final picture of the puzzle. Now, if you use that analogy, you see that you already know what the final result it is. You know that at the end of your work, the puzzle looks pretty much like this. You have the picture at the beginning. And we use the single piece of the puzzle in order to create the final picture. And I want you to think that those part of the puzzle, the pieces of the puzzle, are the data that you are going to use in order to create the final results. So basically, what we are using in order to solve a puzzle is the set of data that we have available when we try to solve the problem. And let me say that in order to create a puzzle, you have already the final picture. You don't need to change your perception about what is going to be the result, because the result is clear. You know when you're starting to assemble the puzzle what you are looking for. So the problem of assembling a puzzle is not really, it doesn't relate to creativity, but rather relates to our ability to understand how the pieces of the puzzle connect together. And let me tell you that 99% of the problem that we face in business can be somehow connected to the idea of solving a puzzle. And also calls the idea of incremental innovation. What we are doing in there is try to set up of processes that streamline our ability to create that picture. And let me tell you that engineer or technician are very good at it. And we spend many years in business to become better in achieving those kind of methodology in the production of our products and services that make us lean. Just take, for example, lean manufacturing or Six Sigma or just in time in Toyota. All those methodologies enable us to use a set of data and create processes that enable us to deliver better value to the final user. What does it mean, better value? Well, it means that we are able to deliver maybe a better product in less time and in a more efficient way. Now, this is very important. And the point is that we got very good at it. Now, there is space always for improvement, but I think that this understanding of a problem as a puzzle, I think our universities around the globe really created a mind that is able to solve this problem. And I think corporations mostly have been focusing on solving puzzles for a long time. And now, though, it's time to introduce another kind of problem. At times, you reach the end of incremental innovation. And when you create a puzzle, you are facing incremental innovation. How you can become better at solving a well-known product, a well-known problem with a new product. So when, though, at times, we face a problem that is not well known, is not a problem that our company is used to solve, well, or for example, we want to start to grow by serving a new customer segment. We can't use data in there. We can't use data because we don't have enough data, or the data that we have is not relevant to the new challenge that we have. And the classic example, in order to distinguish problems that are puzzles and problems that are mysteries, is using the Gillette example. Anytime that the company Gillette faces a drop in sale, they try to do something incremental. So they call the engineer, come together, and what they do, they add a blade to their razors. Okay. Now Gillette got 5 blades in their razors. You understand that the challenge that they face is not a puzzle. They don't need to become better in their processes. They need to change their understanding of what it means shaving. And that requires Gillette to solve a mystery. Even if they are focused on the puzzles, they need to start to solve a mystery and start to think that in order to come up with a new way that enable their customer to shave, they need to forget what they know about their product. And this is quite uncomfortable for many managers because we believe in knowledge management. We believe, oh, if I have the data, I can demonstrate the validity of that idea. The reality is when we face a mystery, how can I create a new way that enables my customer to shave? Well, you can't rely only on data because that will tell you that you need to place another blade to the razor, so we ended up with 6. The point is that for as shocking as it can be, when we want to solve a mystery, we need to forget what we know about our product. And let me go a step farther. We not only have to forget what we know about our product, but also about our customers. And let me give you an example. If I ask you, think about a family member, think about a friend, you can visualize that family member or a friend because you don't have 200 family members. But if I ask you, think about your customers, and you work in a company with 200,000 customers, you are not able to think about 200,000 people together. So what design and design thinking brings to business is the ability to forget 200,000 customers and creating what we call personas that are fictional characters that enable us to access a set of needs that our customer is not able to tell us about. Persona is not just a customer segment. What we are doing in there is try to access a set of needs that our customer is not able to tell us about. And the challenge in forgetting is that we don't have a map. For the first time in business, we are drawing a map in the process of discovering those unarticulated customer needs. So in short, on the left side, a puzzle is something that enables us. Solving a puzzle is making us more efficient to deliver more value, more of the same value to our customer. When we face a mystery, is looking for a new opportunity that is disconnected with the last product that we created, that not only add the more value to the customer, but add a different value for a customer. Here, when we talk about solving a mystery, we are not talking about incremental innovation. That means acquiring a set of new practices that are emerging in the industry. We are talking about creating a different type of value that might serve the same needs, but is a disconnect with the last product that our company creates. And obviously, now we've seen puzzles, pretty much incremental innovation, and mysteries that are actually disrupting innovation. And then we start to believe that, or better to think, that there are two different skills. When we want to solve a puzzle, we use the mind that we use the most in business. That is the rational mind. It's the mind that enables us to constantly create more value for the final user. Now, what is the scenario in which we use rationality? Well, we use rationality when, first of all, we know the problem very well. And because that problem is a problem that maybe we have been tackling since day one when the company was created, we come up with a set of possible solutions that enable us to solve that problem. And the solutions are very clear. And then we choose the best solution in order to solve that problem. It could be A, B, C, D. And we have different solutions, and we pick exactly the solution. We choose the solution that best fit our value chain. It means that is strategically convenient for us as a manufacturers to produce that solution, but also matches the need of the customer. And I think that process is very clear. I think with lean production, this has become something that many companies manage the process of lean production very well. What is the problem? Where is management lacking? What is the challenge, the biggest challenge for management in the 21st century? Is trying to use creativity in order to solve a problem that we don't even know what the problem is in the first place. So the problem is not try to create more revenue. The problem is try to understand a set of obstacle that the users that we want to serve face on a daily basis, but they are not able to articulate them. Why? Because they are not even aware of those kind of problems. In fact, the starting point when we want to bring a creative mind into business is not data, but actually we put data away for a second and we start to observe the customers in their native environment. And let the example that I use all the time, because it's so simple in order to understand, I use this example of the luggage on wheels. Imagine you are a luggage manufacturer and you are manufacturing luggage before that luggage was on wheels. Now, if we just use rationality, okay, in trying to solve this problem, well, without any offense, or because it's not being offensive here, but the job of an engineer conventionally is to stay in the lab, in working in research and development department, and coming up with a luggage that maybe is lighter, or a luggage that enable the owner to identify it when it comes from the conveyor belt, because it's a specific color, because it's a specific shape. You understand, we are focused on the product, the shape of the product, the spec of the product. Do you remember when I was saying rationality or solving a puzzle, incremental innovation doesn't require us as business people to shift our perception of the product or the need of the customer. But creativity, the essence of creativity, is actually being able to shift our perception away from the idea as luggage that comes from data, and data will tell you, oh, customer love a lighter luggage. Customer love a luggage that is customized, that can be done on the specific that you want. The reality, the engineer stays and work on the lab in order to use the latest material to create a better luggage incrementally. The designer goes to the airport or to a train station and start to observe the users. What happened? What is the first observation that a designer would have done in there? Is that as soon as they reach the train station or the airport, the traveler placed their luggages on a trolley. Why? Because if they have 2 or 3 luggages, they put the luggages on the trolley and they just push the trolley. And that would have enabled us to see, to shift our perception, to understand that the real challenge in there wasn't, the real problem in there wasn't to create a lighter luggage, but rather place the wheel on the luggage itself. In that way, you understand that there is a shift in perception from a better luggage as we know it, but incrementally better, is a container, a better container of clothes, shoes, or whatever, to the problem of being a luggage in terms of mobility. And it was only when the perception shift from luggage as a container of clothes to a luggage as something that needs to mobile, something that you can just really bring with you without lifting it, that creativity has reached its potential. And in adding to that is not that we just need to shift our perception from the luggage as something that holds clothes to luggage that we can pull with us. After that intuition that really requires creativity, we need to co-create and test the possible solution with our customers. What does it mean? It means that we do, as designer, we start to prototype different type of trolleys and shape and different type of wheels. And when we prototype that very cheaply and very fastly, we go back to users, commuters, for example, and we just give the prototype and see how they use it. Why? Because we might think that the final use that we believe it is of our prototype is going to be that way. And guess what? Most of the time, we get that wrong. And we start to observe that the user is using what we were thinking that should be used in a completely different way. And that enables us to create even better product. So the co-creation really enables us to invite our final user in becoming a maker, to be an active participant in the value creation process. Now, what is the essential difference between rationality and creativity when we go to business? Is that in theory, we can reach the point in which rationality, we can outsource rationality to a machine, to a computer. We just create the best algorithm, and that machine can be better of a human to solve the problem. We can't outsource creativity. Why? Because creativity is a human endeavor, requires us to look at our customers, the use that they make of our product, and refine our understanding of the product itself. Okay, so let's recap very quickly. And let me know if there is any question, because I understand this opens up a completely new agenda for business people. We are starting to understand the difference between puzzle and mystery. Puzzles, in order to be solved, we start with data coming from the past, and setting in place a set of processes in order to create value, more value for our users. When we try to solve a mystery, we actually forget. We forget about what we know about the customers, our product, and we start to create new value that might serve new customers or serve the current customer in a different way. Now, we use rationality in order to solve problems that are puzzles, and we use creativity in order to solve those problems that we are not even able to define day one. But now, in closing in this part on strategic design, let me put this on a time frame, because otherwise we are a little bit confused. What came first, business strategy or design and design thinking? Let me tell you that without any shadow of a doubt, the first way of thinking that emerged in business, and the one that's still playing the strongest role, is business strategy. Business strategy enables us to solve problems like puzzles and use the rational side of our brain. And let me tell you that business strategy really emerged after the Second World War for the simple reason that it was the first time in history that corporations start to face an increasing level of competition in many industries. In fact, just imagine the demand that was caused by the two World Wars was huge. But after the Second World War, corporations were producing, there were more and more competitors, and then there was a need to create a kind of some analytical tool that enabled those managers to understand which in the industry should I compete. In fact, in our business school, create many different frameworks and models in order to help managers to understand competition. For example, there was the idea of industry analysis, or even the concept of an industry. And then when you understand your industry, your competitor, you do a value chain analysis that basically is looking within the activities that your company need to perform in order to create the final product that add value for the user. And by analyzing your value chain, you are able to produce much faster and leaner, and try to understand not only how competitive advantage sits on the single activities that you perform, but rather how the advantage that you create overall stays in the connection on the different activities that you perform. And Professor Michael Porter called them fits. How the activities that you perform within your organization build upon each other the final advantage that you have in your organization. And the example that I always use here is how now European companies are able to imitate Ryanair. Ryanair is a low-cost airline company that is based here in Dublin, where I live. No other European companies, air flight companies, are able to imitate that because the linkages between the different activities within Ryanair are so strong that even if you try to imitate Ryanair, it's very difficult because it took 15 years for Ryanair to reach the level of efficiency. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that if you look what is in common in the different tools on the left side of this chart, is that industry analysis, value chain analysis, competitor analysis, they have in common the analytical part. We use the rationality in order to understand where within that industry should I compete. And I should position my company in that part of the industry because it is less exposed to the competitive forces. Okay? But unfortunately, there is a very strong limit to only use rationality within our businesses. And this limit is that you can perform all the analytic thinking that you want, or the strategic thinking that you want. The strategy will only tell you in which part of the industry you should compete. And that in itself is very important, but it doesn't tell you how you achieve that positioning. So what really start to emerge organically in management is design, or at the beginning was industrial design. Industrial design really emerged, and obviously was industrial design because it was creating during an industrial economy. They said, you know what, our engineering department is very good, the spec of that product are terrific, but we need to make a product that is not only functional, but also is aesthetic, that is appealing to the final user. And that is in a nutshell, industrial design. Creating a product that is functional, but is also attractive to the eye of the customer. And from there, and this goes back possibly in 1960s and 70s, slowly but constantly, we move from industrial design, that by the way is still there and still playing an important role, we move towards human-centered design. And what is human-centered design? And the example that I want to use here to make you understand what a human-centered design is exactly the chair in which I'm sitting. I'm sitting on an Aeron chair that is manufactured by Herman Miller, that is an American company. Now, this chair where I'm sitting is also in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Why is it there? Because not only this chair is a piece of art in terms of the way that it looks, because it doesn't look like any other chair made before the chair was made, but also is kind of shaped around my body. Now, because they mass manufactured this chair, the chair comes in 3 different sizes, A, B, C, and has so many adjustments that I can pretty much achieve whatever tension in the back and can be adjusted in the pressure that he places on the different part of the back. Why is human-centered? Because when Herman Miller started to produce this chair, wasn't focused on the product, but wasn't centered on the human and the needs that they have of their chair. Now, there's been another iteration of the role of design thinking, is what we call design thinking. And what it is. Design thinking is not only about creating a product or service that is human-centered, but my understanding of design thinking is pushing the agenda of design forward. It's a problem-solving methodology, so it's not connected to a physical product or service, but rather is a methodology that enables us not only to solve a problem that we already know, because that can be, we have seen, that can be done by, eventually, by an algorithm, requires strategic thinking and rational thinking. But design thinking enables us to acquire the mindset of a designer, to try to access a set of needs of our customers that our customers are not able to tell us about. And the example that we use all the time is Henry Ford. If Henry Ford went to a customer and asked you, what do you want? Well, the customer would have said, I want a faster horse. Because it's not the job of your customer telling you exactly what they want. It's your job as an entrepreneur, or better, an intrapreneur working within an organization, to access those unarticulated needs. But we can only do that if we embrace, first of all, the mindset of the designer, but also a set of tools and techniques that are not, they don't come from rational thinking, from strategy, but they come from the way that designer always work. So prototyping and testing a product with your customer, make the customer an active contributor to the success of your product. But now let me close this part saying that what I'm focusing most at the minute is a part within design thinking that is, to me, is the most fascinating and relates to our ability as human beings, before being a manager, to be creative, to shift the perception of our understanding of our product and the customer needs. And that the example of the luggage, from being something that holds the clothes to be something that, first of all, need to be mobile. So shifting the idea from luggage as something that we just place our clothes in to a luggage that we can really bring with us without the need of lifting it is fundamental. And obviously the value that you create when you are able in design thinking is called reframing, changing the way that you think about your product and the problem that the customer is facing. But now let me give you just a quick recap. We started to try to understand the difference between solving a puzzle and solving a mystery. After that, we have seen how rationality enables us to solve puzzles, those problems that are like puzzles. When we know exactly what the problem is, we have a possible or set solution that we can embrace, and we know exactly what is the best solution for our organization. And then we use creativity in order to solve those problems that we are not even able to imagine in day one. And then is where we need to embrace the mind of the designer, need to be curious, need to be inquisitive. What is the real problem in there? And then we observe our customers, and by observing our customers, we kind of get some clues in their behavior, and then we co-create and test a possible solution with the user. And then I made the difference between, just to give you some context, of strategic thinking and design thinking. But obviously, when all of this comes together, we ended up having business innovation. When we are able to bring strategy and design together to solve a problem, well, I can safely say that it's complex. Business innovation, most of all, requires a team effort. It's not the endeavor of one person to create an innovating company. Because innovation is messy, is untidy, is disorganized, is confusing and frustrating. Frustrating for those people that really have the natural tendency to be creative, but don't have the tools and the methodologies they are operating within a company maybe that doesn't allow them to start a strategic design process within an organization. Now, let me close this presentation with something that I'm working on. Now, this is a strategic design project that I'm in the process of implementing that with different organizations. And I want you to notice the difference between the first two columns on the left side and the other column. Now, this method is called Kanban, and I think is familiar with many of you. Now, if we look at this task that is, for example, the design criterion, that is one of the steps within the design thinking process, there is just a list of tasks that we need to do in order to achieve a certain outcome. Now, the problem that if you just organize your strategic design process within your organization with just tasks, most probably people get lost in the process. So what I have developed over time is using the concept of a Kanban, but empowering that with visuals. So what we are using in design, strategic design, is a set of templates that enable people to think visually. And this is the first step in the design process, is try to understand how we can frame the opportunity for design. First of all, we need to ask ourselves, is that problem a puzzle or is a mystery? Now, in order to answer this question, we need to understand, is that problem human-centered? It means that involve people. Is the final user a person? Second, our level, or what is the level of understanding of that problem? What is the level of uncertainty? What is the degree of complexity in solving that problem? What are the data available and the current offer? The power of using visual thinking combined with the efficiency that Kanban can bring to our organization is that anyone that belongs to a team of people responsible to innovate can actually write a comment in here and start a conversation about what the possible problem that we want to solve is, that set in motion a set of discussion that eventually ended up to start a strategic design process. What is the problem? Is that many organizations just create processes that are linear. And unfortunately, innovation is not linear, but is something that requires a common language that is not written, but actually visual. And you can see this was understanding a project. And the second kind of template is, okay, we convene that maybe we can use design in order to solve that process. And the second step that I try to visualize here is, okay, so if that is kind of, we want to use design in order to solve that problem, what is the opportunity? Okay, what is the possibility for new value creation? And we get people in the same team working in trying to innovate, say, okay, can we list the possibilities that we have as an organization to create new value for our customers? And then also we ask them, say, what are the limitations? And what is amazing is starting a conversation on this side of the screen and see what people start to highlight as possibility and limitation. And let me tell you that the design thinking or strategic design actually gets started when you start the conversation. And that is something that possibly was my best, let's say, my best learning that I got working with Professor Jean Litka, is that she says, actually, you know what, you wouldn't have neither strategy, neither design, unless there is a conversation going on in a company. So let me close this webinar asking you a question. Is there a conversation in your organization between the people that want to innovate and try to understand the problem that we face is a problem that can be solved with data, or is a problem that we need to use other tools like design thinking, visual thinking, or human-centered design in order to be solved? Now, if there is any question, I'll be happy to address question as I can.
Thank you, Stefano. This is Paul. So I'd like to ask a question. What are the greatest challenges inside an organization to implement design thinking on a team basis? That is to say, obviously, if you have 2 people, 3 people working together, it's quite, I would imagine, much more straightforward, for whatever way to describe it, or easier. Maybe that's another way of describing it. What is the challenge, let's say, when you have a team that is trying to solve a problem that you mentioned, Gillette, has a really big audience, and the team is much, is fairly large, but they've never used design thinking before?
Okay, absolutely. And that goes back to the common pattern in this presentation was that basically in any organization, we have people that pretty much are rational. And let me say, when I say rational, it's not that they were born engineers. They went through schools that put them toward a rational way of thinking. And they acquired the mindset since possibly primary school. And when they face a problem, they always frame that problem as a rational problem. And we have other people that either by nature or the way they've been schooled, they are just more naturally creative, or because they have this intrinsic nature to be more creative, they always are not happy to say, oh, actually, that is a problem that can be solved rationally. But actually is a problem that needs to be looked at it from a different perspective. And let me tell you, completely honestly, I define myself as a trainer. So it means that I bring somehow a kind of knowledge within an organization. But my job as a design strategist is really enabling a conversation between the rational people within an organization and the creative that otherwise wouldn't exist. And what is the outcome? Is that it might take you, honestly, maybe 1 month before that conversation start to happen. And the best way that I can see that conversation happening is when there are tools, like the one that I show here, that is a very basic tool, but enable a common language because it's based on visualization. So the power of visualization is overcoming exactly what you said. What is the biggest challenge? And the challenge in there is to be able to see the same challenge from a perspective of a strategic problem or a design problem. Now, because we have the ability to write, we are enabling people that come from different backgrounds, different way to think, to actually to coordinate and to reply to each other very quickly. So the conversation eventually, we will come to an end, not to an end, but really to try to understand what is the pattern of the conversation. And that really, as a design strategy, I see, okay, what is the problem in there? And the problem is that maybe you have the rational people that they don't want to give away the rationality, and they are scared by the creative people. And the creative people are actually the opposite, are scared when you put too much processes into the design of a new solution. I don't know if that answers your question, but pretty much is overcoming the fear of the other side, either creativity or rationality.
Yes, that did answer. I have another question also, and please do. Otherwise, if you're interested and have questions, please ask. So my follow-up question is, I'm not sure how much what you do and what you're talking about touches what De Bono calls 6 thinking hats. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with De Bono and 6 thinking hats, but in terms of putting on different personas in order to analyze a problem from different individuals' perspectives based on so-called 6 thinking hats. Is that something that you either are familiar with or have applied in this kind of design thinking world?
Okay, absolutely. Now, and that's a very interesting question, because we are reaching, when we were doing, I wasn't there, but thinking about product development in the 60s, who was part of the conversation? Engineers. I give you something from R&D as part of the conversation. The conversation was only between people that have all the knowledge of that specific product. And then what was the problem? That we were able only to solve a problem that was incremental. So in there, the problem was, how do I make a luggage that is lighter? Because the problem was that the luggage is too heavy. And then they set up a set of processes that enable companies to create a better, incrementally better luggage. Why now? Companies start to embrace design, invite their customers. And let me tell you that the customer don't have the answer. So the reason why a company invite the customer and start to co-create and also imagine those personas that are fictional characters that are not really a real customer, but start to think with the idea of a customer, is because in a way they contribute with different perspective to this formation of a new product or service, but not a better, technically or specs-wise, better product, but a product that solves a problem that is different from what you thought. Imagine if we were only relying on rational people in order to solve the problem of luggage. Today, we would have been having luggage. So when we come out of the taxi and try to jump into the airplane, we need to still getting a very light luggage and put on that on a trolley. Okay? Why we were able to overcome the idea of a luggage as only something that hold clothes or hold whatever you have in your luggage, because somebody had the idea of to connect two things that are completely disconnected in our mind, that is luggage and mobility. And it was only when that creativity took place within the organization that opened up completely a new way to think about luggage, because they were able to disconnect with only data and see through the problem. The problem wasn't a better luggage, was luggage wheels. That is not luggage, is a mobility problem. Now imagine how much new competitive advantage can be released when a company not only is getting better at the product, but is actually starting to change the perception of what the product is. What is the real problem that the customer is facing? So answering your question, yes, now more and more companies that are successful are not actually inviting their users or the people that already buy the product, but they actually try to go in the place where users are and observing them. Because ultimately the clues for innovation are already there. The question is, are we able to perceive them? And I suppose that is the biggest challenge that we face nowadays, to become more creative, to allow creativity to be part of the business development of an organization.
Well, that's great. So it doesn't look like any questions have come in. We do ask you for your feedback. Please, if you have a question, please raise it. If not, send it to helpdesk@starweaver.com, and Stefano can address it sort of offline. But in any case, we'll send you a link to the this webinar. It is being recorded, as I mentioned, and it should be available later today, everyone, and you'll see it available on our YouTube channel as well. So thank you very much. We look forward to, there's about 7 or 8 new programs coming up. Go to starweaver.com to register, and we all wish you a wonderful week. Thank you very much, Stefano. Wonderful program.
Thank you very much, Paul.